Speak in the name of the risen Lord, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. Let's try it again. Happy Pentecost. Happy Pentecost. Today is an explosive new reality where the disciples are imbibed with the Spirit, sent out into the world to preach and to teach and to be among people of every nation and every tongue, crossing every border and every boundary. Happy Pentecost. Happy Pentecost. See, I'm training you. You had no idea. Happy Pentecost in the sense of the Spirit coming in and being with the disciples, Jesus being with the disciples and saying to them, "Peace be with you." Now granted, not the peace that we might imagine, not the opposite of war, but peace in the knowledge of God, peace in the knowledge of salvation, peace in the knowledge of redemption. Peace I leave with you. Happy Pentecost. Happy Pentecost. It's the last time, I promise. Happy Pentecost because it's the beginning of our church. Today in our tradition, we mark this as the beginning place for the church as a people, not an institution, mind you, not four walls and a roof, but as a group of people going out into the world to espouse the message of Jesus Christ in hope of sharing it, the opportunity of salvation, and hope of sharing it that others might become connected to them, in hopes of sharing it that they too might build new and different community for the right reason. And so perhaps it might seem appropriate today that we speak a little bit about birthdays, a little bit about the opportunity to be found in that kind of spirit. I want to teach you a new word today, and I feel relatively confident that you don't know this word. The word is this. Doljabet. Can you say it with me? Doljabet. Now you and I know equally the same amount of Korean. Dol means birthday. Jabet is the celebration of. And Doljabet is a special time in the life of a child. It is the celebration of their first year of birth. And it's at that time where the community, the family, the friends, the neighbors, they're all invited in to celebrate that this child has made it 12 months. Which for a long time in Korea, this is a pretty notable thing. And so in their showing up, they're showing their investment in the child. And in doing that, they bring things for the investment of that child. So my sister-in-law, Jane, she has a picture of her first birthday, and on her fingers, each finger has a gold ring, which is a pretty common gift. So why give a baby a gold ring, right? They're going to grow out of it. I can barely even fit my wedding ring. Why give a baby? Because that gold can later be melted down and put into something that can be later invested for the sake of that child as they're growing up. So it's this notion of coming together, giving witness and support, love, and then giving investment so that the child can prosper. It's not dissimilar, I think, from what Jesus receives at his birth. What? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. This sense that you're investing it into the ministry, into the work, into the life of that person. There's another really significant instance in this celebration of Doljabet, and that is somewhere in that celebration, the child is presented with a tray. And on that tray are about 8 to 10 items. They're all distinct in character. You might see a paintbrush, a pencil, maybe a stethoscope. A modern tray might have a stethoscope on it, or a gavel. And the idea is that you would bring the child over the tray, the mother would hover them over the tray, and the child would pick one item. And that one item that they pick is a sign and a symbol of their destiny, where they're going. So if they pick the gavel, they're going to go into law. Maybe. If they pick the pencil, it's academia. If they pick the microphone, maybe they might be a singer or a great communicator. And so they pick this one thing, and in a lot of ways it plants a seed inside of that family, that community that says, this is what the hope is for this child. And of course, they only put good things on the table, right? But this is the hope for that child. And so where does that manifest itself? Well, when he or she comes back and they're 10 years old and they have an A+ on their spelling test, and they say, well, you did pick the pencil, right? But it's these little seeds of intention that are sown within the child. For me, it's similar to baptism, but in a different way. It's the people being around the occasion of the sacramental rite and endorsing it and saying that they're going to walk with you along that way. That's very much what this is. And so it becomes very much a discussion about calling. What are you called to do? What are you called to be? What kind of person are you called to be? And when I think of that, that is certainly and specifically the context of Pentecost. It's a conversation of God calling his people to go out and do his work in the world. And to do it with a sense of universality that meets people in different ways, right? It's not just about one language, one tongue, one border, one state. It's about the diversity of the experience. And so this morning I want to speak to you. I could speak to you in a lot of different ways about calling, but I want to speak to you briefly about my own calling. I believe I was called to the church 2 times in my life, and then continuously from then on, but 2 distinct times. The first was when I was like 20 or 21 years old. That was a time when I was too young and too inexperienced to really heed that call or to even understand what to do with it, and so I walked away from it. The second time in my life that I received that call, I'm not going to speak about the first one so much, but the second time I received that call was when I was about 27, 28 years old. And I had a wonderful, fast-paced, highly rewarding job. I was a mover and a shaker in the industry that I was in. And I decided, although it was good work, important work, I was working in the nonprofit field, this wasn't what I was meant to do. And so within a week's time, literally within a week's time, I sold everything, I transferred everything, and I moved back home to Virginia. At the time I was living in North Carolina. And you want to talk about a humbling experience? Live on your own for 12 years and then move back in with your parents. It'll hit you in a way that you never thought possible. It will bring you to your knees. Someone reminding you about your dirty clothes and, all those lovely things that go along with it. But they were so supportive to welcome me back into the home. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I just knew I didn't want to do what I was doing, if that makes sense. And so I came home, and all my family lived there. We saw everybody every day, the good and the bad of that. I say that with love. But we all lived 3 miles apart. And I decided I wanted to seek out the priest that I first met when I was seeking interest into the church when I was in my early 20s, 21. And so he was retired at the time, so he was bopping between different parishes in the diocese. And so finally I caught up to him. He saw me in the service, and after the service I went up to him and said, Father Bob, it's good to see you. I think I've really had a readjustment in my life. Keep in mind I'm at the bottom of things emotionally. I'm really, I think I'm being called to the ministry. And he looked at me for a second and he said, Nick, can't you do something else? He said, how about you go back to school? How about you find a girlfriend? Is there anything else that you would rather do? And it just kind of caught me off guard. He was serious. But he said, this is the thing. He's like, if you really want to do this, if you really want to be part of this work, you have to be able to be willing to give 100%. If you can't give 100% in this, you're going to do an incredible amount of damage to yourself and other people. So he knows me. It didn't help that I used to date his daughter. But he knew me. And I did heed some of his advice. I decided to go back to school. and work on a degree in sociology, which was very different than my studies in literature before that. And when I did that, I decided to go back to church, really go back to church. And so where I found myself on a Sunday morning was at the 8 o'clock service. Now, the particular church I was at is All Saints Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia on River Road. It's a huge church, but they have this wonderful small chapel that's about half the size of half of the church here. And what was wonderful is I could go into that space and sit in my pew, leave me alone, and I could listen to my priest, and I could participate in my sacrament. And for me, it was about connection and building a relationship with God. And it was wonderful. And there was, importantly, no music at the 8 o'clock service. I wasn't a very good singer. And so all these things sort of factor in, right? But it's about where you're at. That's why we offer the diversity of services here. And so I would go to that service, and I went to it for a while, and I decided maybe this isn't enough. Maybe I should go more. So they had a midweek Wednesday service. So I started going to the midweek Wednesday service at 12, and also the morning service on Sunday mornings. And I did that for a while. I'm still going to school, and that turned out not to be enough either. So I don't know if you knew this, but in our deanery, there's a place you can go every day of the week except Monday to receive Holy Communion. There's a church somewhere in our deanery, in our diocese, that's offering Mass every day of the week. And so that's what I did. And I started going to services on a regular basis. And what I found was that as an individual, as a believer, I felt materially changed, not just spiritually and emotionally, but materially changed by my newfound relationship with Jesus Christ. So much so that it began to materially affect the relationships of the people around me in a positive way. And then I did the unthinkable. I decided I was going to go to the 10:30 service where the music was and the people were. And I did that for a little while. And then one day I was invited to go to coffee hour. Can you believe it? I didn't go. I don't know if you can resonate with this, but I didn't go to church to make friends. That's why that was not why I was in church. I just wanted that close personal relationship with God. That was enough for me, and that's okay. And it's okay. I'm not saying anyone should have this kind of evolution to their faith, and if you don't, then you don't have a calling. That's not what I'm saying at all. Just saying this is my calling. And so that turned into a little bit of Bible study here and there, but really I was plugged into no ministries of real purpose. Right? I wasn't clothing anybody. I wasn't feeding anyone. And then one day at a Wednesday service, one of the associate priests who was retired at the time, his name was Father Ross. He's an amazing man. He taught at Union Theological in Manhattan. He's of Scottish descent. His sermons were just some of the best I've ever heard. He comes running into the chapel after the service and he said, "Nick, I'm so glad you're here. I need your help." It was the middle of the summer, vacation Bible school, and the teacher that they had hired didn't show up. He said, "I just need you to sit for 30 minutes. We'll figure it out, just 30 minutes. So I was in there for 30, and then I was in there for an hour. Then I was in there for an hour and a half. Still no other teacher coming in, mind you. I was in there for 2 hours, in there for 3 hours until the end of the day. I stayed with them the whole day. And at the end of the day, Father Ross comes into the church and he says, "Nick, listen, this is your call." Right? It hits you heavy. When somebody affirms what it is that you believe, but they affirm it in a way to say that you should continue to pursue it, they endorse you, they support you in it. It's like the community that surrounds the child. And sure enough, I did. I pursued it. I pursued it at that church. Later seminary, the story continues even to this day. But there's something so resolute about having someone affirm for you what it is that you might think, but you don't really completely understand. And so I was always troubled in this process, though, that this could be my call, but yet I didn't feel like I was doing or involved in like a real material change in the world, right? When asked in our discernment process, both my wife and I, we were just friends at the time, but separated from one another. When we were independently asked in our discernment process, why do you want to become a priest? We both said the exact same thing. We wanted to change the world, to which her committee and my committee laughed at us. Right? Because it seems like an impossibility, except to say, what I realize now is that my ability to be in concert and in prayer with God, in concert and in prayer with my community, materially changed me, materially changed my relationships, and in fact changes the world. And that's all about calling, it's all about purpose. And later, I would get involved in all sorts of different ministries, right? But it's all about the time and the place and where it hits you. And I can give you a laundry list of the ministries that I've done. I can also give you a laundry list of the ministries I don't like doing. And that's okay. And as I think about that, both the list of the things I love doing as well as the list of the things I don't like doing, you know, I'm picturing that tray that they give the child, you know, that I mentioned in that birthday celebration. The child gets to pick one thing. Well, and this is how the church is different. You don't get to just pick one thing. You can pick one thing, put that thing down, and pick up another thing. Like our God is that big, he's that infinite, that abundant, that he gives you that kind of opportunity and that kind of spirit in your life where you don't have to do the same thing forever. You don't have to be the same person forever. And our God is one that's affirming us, today specifically, affirming us that we would be a people to go out and seek that kind of call. He's telling you, you are called, now go and do that work. And we would be the people to hear it. We would be the people to hear it on this Pentecost day and know that God is affirming us. And if that's not enough for you, because sometimes it's not, let me know how I can affirm you. And let me know how we can affirm one another. So that we might be caught up in that same kind of Pentecostal spirit that's not just spreading love and peace, but a real sense of peace, a real sense of evangelism out into the world where we feel so passionate and love our neighbors so much that we have no choice, but to share with them the gospel that they too have the opportunity for salvation. Happy Pentecost.